So let's try and unpack this. It's really a truly unprecedented moment we're looking at.
Mm,
For the very first time in history, we've actually seen Israel launch an airstrike on a Gulf state.
yeah.
And not just any Gulf state, but a close ally of the United States. I mean, spectacularly missed their stated target.
It's quite
The
something.
implications are just, well, they're staggering, aren't they? Not just for the stability of an already volatile region, but, for the very possibility of peace itself.
Absolutely.
This isn't just another incident. It feels like something that fundamentally shifts the geopolitical landscape.
It really does. And a critical aspect to consider here is how this single event, this airstrike on Qatar's capital, Doha,
Mhm.
has created such widespread ripple effects.
Yeah.
It hasn't only drastically escalated an already dire situation in Gaza, but it's also simultaneously shattered crucial diplomatic channels.
Right.
It's provoked unusually sharp public criticism from the U.S. president, which is rare.
Very right.
And it's united international condemnation against Israel in a way we really haven't seen before. It's truly like a series of diplomatic dominoes, each one falling with pretty profound consequences.
Okay, so today we're going to take a deep dive into the source material you've shared with us. We'll explore the shocking details of the strike, look at the immediate fallout, and, crucially, connect it all back to the catastrophic humanitarian crisis that just continues to unfold in Gaza. Our mission really is to extract the most important nuggets of knowledge, help you understand this incredibly intricate web of reactions, and grasp what this all truly means for the future of the Middle East. So hopefully you leave this conversation well-informed with a much clearer picture of this critical moment. All right, let's set the scene. Imagine Doha, Qatar's incredibly vibrant, very modern capital.
Yeah.
And we're talking specifically about the West Bay Lagoon district. Now, this isn't some, remote military installation or a contested border zone. Not at
It's
all.
upscale.
It's a bustling, upscale residential area, a real hub of international activity. It's home to numerous foreign embassies, major international businesses, and maybe most importantly, families.
Right.
Many of whom are international residents, diplomats, business people living their lives.
Ordinary people.
Exactly. And on September 9th, 2025, at approximately 3:000 p.m. local time, this quiet, diplomatic heart of the city was just rocked by multiple explosions.
It's hard to overstate the shock.
The sheer audacity of such a strike in that specific location, it's truly shocking to consider, especially given its profound diplomatic significance as a neutral ground.
Absolutely. And placing this event within the wider regional dynamics, this operation was described by the Israeli Defense Forces, the IDF, as a precise strike. That was their term.
Precise.
Targeting senior Hamas leadership. But here's where the narrative becomes, deeply problematic.
How so?
This strike occurred precisely as those very Hamas leaders were in the middle of a crucial meeting actively discussing a U.S. proposed ceasefire.
Oh.
So, this naturally leads us to ask, what does it mean when you bomb the very table where negotiations are trying to happen?
Yeah, I mean...
You're not just attempting to neutralize targets. You're effectively attacking the diplomatic process itself. Quite literally, attempting to blow up the pathway to peace.
It sends a hell of a message.
It does, and it highlights this critical divergence between maybe military doctrine and diplomatic reality, where that precise strike rhetoric often clashes with the political necessity of keeping negotiation channels open.
So let's delve into the specifics of this attack, because the details, they paint a really stark and troubling picture. We know the date and time, September 9, 2025, 3:00 p.m. local time. The location, as you highlighted, Doha's West Bay Lagoon district, a densely populated residential area.
Yes.
What makes this so historically significant, though, is that it marks Israel's first known strike on Qatar. And even more remarkably, its first direct assault on a Gulf Cooperation Council, or GCC, member state.
That's the key point.
For those maybe unfamiliar, the GCC is a powerful, intergovernmental, political, and economic union of, all the Arab states of the Persian Gulf, except Iraq.
Right.
This is a line that, honestly, until now, I don't think anyone thought would ever be crossed in the region. It creates a dangerous new precedent.
Exactly. And the intended targets, according to the Israeli intelligence cited in the sources, were indeed very specific individuals.
Who were they aiming for?
Khalil Ahaya, who is Hamas's chief negotiator,
Here we go.
Khalid Mashal, a very senior political leader, and Zahir Jabrin. These are unequivocally high-profile figures within Hamas.
Okay. Top leadership.
Definitely. However, the actual casualties paint a dramatically different and frankly tragic picture of the strike's effectiveness.
So who was actually hit?
A total of 6 people were killed in the attack. These included Humam al-Haya, who is the son of the chief negotiator, Khalil al-Haya.
Oh, wow. His son.
Yes. Also, 1 Hamas aide, 3 bodyguards, and critically, 1 Qatari Internal Security Force member.
Qatari officer.
Yes. A member of Qatar's own security forces killed on Qatari soil by an Israeli strike.
That's huge.
It is. And perhaps the most significant and arguably catastrophic failure here, despite the claim of a precise strike, is that all of the senior Hamas leaders, the primary targets, not only survived the attack.
They weren't hit?
No. They walked away from the very meeting that was bombed. They survived.
So the precise strike missed its primary targets entirely.
Completely. Which immediately raises some very serious questions about the reliability of the intelligence that underpins such a high-stakes operation.
You'd think. And the immediate impact, it extends far beyond just the casualties in these missed targets, right?
Oh, absolutely.
The strike occurred dangerously close to Qatar's Al Udeid Air Base, which is, for those who might not know, the largest U.S. military installation in the entire Middle East.
A massive critical base for the U.S.
The proximity of this strike to such a critical U.S. base immediately raises serious questions, doesn't it? About the safety of American personnel, American assets, and the stability of those strategic partnerships.
It has to.
An ally bombing so close to a vital U.S. strategic asset. That's a profound concern. And the Israeli response to this apparent failure was, well, to say the least, shockingly defiant.
What did they say?
Israeli Ambassador Yechiel Leiter was quoted stating quite bluntly, "If we didn't get them this time, we'll get them the next time."
Wow. No remorse there.
It almost sounds like a promise of further escalation rather than, any expression of regret for the collateral damage or the massive diplomatic fallout.
Which brings us to a crucial point of analysis, really. Beyond the immediate failure, the sources seem to reveal a profound strategic miscalculation behind the Doha strike, especially considering those ongoing ceasefire talks.
Right. So was this just a catastrophic intelligence failure on Israel's part? Did they genuinely believe they had a precise window to eliminate these leaders, only to miss them and kill others, including that Qatari officer?
That's one possibility. It points to potential flaws in human intelligence, signal intelligence, maybe even the strike execution chain itself. Lots of things could have gone wrong.
Or is there another possibility?
Or, and this is a much more troubling possibility, was this a deliberate escalation? Was it intended to send a stark message, perhaps to Hamas, maybe even to Qatar itself, regardless of the direct target outcome?
Kind of like, we can reach you anywhere.
Possibly. This interpretation suggests a calculated risk. Maybe even a willingness to undermine the U.S.-led negotiations for what they perceived as a tactical advantage, or just a show of force.
Either way.
Regardless of the precise intent, it unequivocally and fundamentally undermined any goodwill that might have existed in that negotiation process. It effectively blew up the very channel the U.S. was trying to use for peace.
And the fact that the U.S. military even tried to warn Qatar in advance, but it was too late. So what does that tell us?
It underscores a profound breakdown in communication and trust between allies. It indicates a severe lack of coordination, maybe even consultation at the highest levels.
Okay, so this strike wasn't just unprecedented for Qatar. It triggered a remarkably sharp and, crucially, public rebuke from the United States. And this is an ally, the U.S., traditionally known for its steadfast, almost unwavering support of Israel. This wasn't just a quiet diplomatic note exchanged behind closed doors.
No, this was out in the open.
This was a loud, public condemnation, signaling a new level of strain in the relationship.
Yeah, and one of the most striking elements here is President Trump's rare public criticism. It marks a really significant departure from typical U.S. diplomatic protocol when it comes to Israel.
What did he actually say?
His words clearly signaled deep dissatisfaction. They highlighted the acute strategic dilemma this strike created for the U.S. He stated, and I'm quoting from the sources here, "I'm not thrilled about the whole situation. I was very unhappy about every aspect."
Every aspect. That's strong language.
Exceptionally strong from a U.S. president regarding an Israeli action. Then the White House followed up with a formal statement, explicitly asserting that, quote, "unilaterally bombing inside Qatar, a sovereign nation and close ally, does not advance Israel or America's goals."
So a direct contradiction of Israeli interests aligning with U.S. interests.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Vice President J.D. Vance also publicly confirmed the president's unhappiness, saying the president made very clear he's not happy about that.
Wow.
And as we touched upon earlier, the fact the U.S. military tried to warn Qatar, but it was too late. It reveals not just a deep disconnect, but a serious lack of coordination and, frankly, a clear disregard for U.S. interest on Israel's part. It puts significant strain on the alliance.
And that lack of coordination, it places the U.S. in an incredibly difficult strategic dilemma, doesn't it?
Hugely difficult.
Qatar hosts Al Udeid Air Base. It's a vital strategic asset for U.S. military operations across the entire Middle East. It's a critical hub for air power, logistics, counterterrorism efforts.
It's indispensable, really, for U.S. operations in that region.
So this attack directly threatens those critical strategic partnerships, not just with Qatar, but with other Gulf states who now must be questioning the reliability and, well, the respect from a shared ally, Israel.
They must be watching very closely.
Furthermore, it puts the Abraham Accords, that significant diplomatic achievement aiming to normalize relations between Israel and Arab states. It puts them on extremely thin ice.
Very thin ice.
Possibly cracking.
This isn't just a political headache for the U.S. It feels like a calculated risk by Israel that carries potentially devastating consequences for broader U.S. foreign policy and strategic objectives in the region. Things like intelligence sharing, regional counterterrorism cooperation.
And absolutely. The U.S. relies heavily on its partnerships in the Gulf for a multitude of reasons. Counterterrorism, maintaining regional stability against threats like Iran, projecting power effectively.
Right.
When one of those key partners, like Qatar, is directly attacked by another key ally, Israel, it forces a really difficult choice and fundamentally undermines the very foundation of those alliances.
It fractures the whole setup.
Exactly. The Abraham Accords were built on this fragile balance of shared geopolitical interests, particularly concerns about Iran and, of course, economic incentives.
An attack on a GCC member state, though, it fundamentally shatters that premise. It's a significant setback that could unravel years of careful diplomacy and destabilize these nascent regional alignments that the U.S. has worked hard to foster.
Okay, so against this backdrop of unprecedented presidential disapproval, this unraveling regional stability, Secretary of State Marco Rubio was immediately dispatched to Israel.
Right, an emergency visit.
An emergency visit on September 14th, just days after the strike. What on earth was he hoping to achieve in such a volatile environment? An environment where a key U.S. ally had just unilaterally attacked another.
Yeah, it must have been an incredibly delicate and high-stakes mission.
For sure.
Look, Rubio's primary objectives were certainly ambitious, maybe even bordering on the improbable, given the circumstances.
What were they trying to do?
He was there, first, to demand explanations for the unilateral strike, trying to understand why Israel acted without U.S. consultation or even apparently explicit awareness.
Get some answer.
Right. And crucially, he aimed to somehow salvage the ceasefire negotiations. The very negotiations the Doha strike itself had seemingly torpedoed by hitting the negotiators.
A tough ass.
Extremely. And on a broader scale, he was attempting to balance relations between these two key allies, Israel and the Gulf states, whose trust had just been severely damaged.
Patch things up.
Trying to. And beyond the immediate crisis, there were also additional discussions mentioned in the sources, specifically about threats of West Bank annexation, which were also on the agenda. That just further complicated an already fraught situation.
So adding more fuel to the fire, potentially.
Potentially. And in a rather symbolic gesture, which, felt particularly strained given the severity of the crisis, Rubio prayed for peace in the Holy Land, at the Western Wall, alongside Netanyahu. Netanyahu, perhaps incongruously given the circumstances, claimed the U.S.-Israel alliance is as gable as the stones of the wall.
Durable as the stones after just bombing an ally's capital near a U.S. base.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It felt awkward, to say the least.
Which naturally leads us to ask, how can you possibly salvage negotiations when the mediator's capital has just been bombed and the very negotiators were in the crosshairs?
It's almost impossible to imagine.
The imagery of Rubio and Netanyahu at the Western Wall claiming a durable alliance, it just feels particularly strained, doesn't it? Even contradictory, given the immediate diplomatic crisis that had just unfolded.
Completely.
It's hard to imagine any real meaningful progress being made towards peace in that kind of atmosphere. It appears the trust was maybe not quite as durable as those ancient stones, after all.
It certainly seems that way.
Okay, so it wasn't just the U.S. expressing displeasure, and this certainly wasn't confined to quiet diplomatic grumbling, was it?
Not at all.
The Qatar strike ignited a veritable firestorm of international condemnation. It created this rare, almost unprecedented moment of unity among diverse nations, many of whom are usually quite divided on complex Middle East issues.
Yeah, the speed and the breadth of this global reaction are truly remarkable.
It felt like everyone weighed in.
Pretty much. And one of the most striking elements here is the sheer breadth and depth of the international outrage. This wasn't confined to the, let's say, typical critics of Israel.
Right.
Even close allies, including major European nations and others, swiftly broke ranks to condemn the action. This led to an unprecedented alignment against Israel's actions, making it clear that this strike was seen globally as a severe breach of international norms and sovereignty.
So who specifically condemned it?
Well, United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres was unequivocal. He called the attack a flagrant violation of sovereignty and territorial integrity of Qatar.
Flagrant violation. Strong words from the UN chief.
Exceptionally strong language, yes. It reflects the severity with which the international community viewed this act.
And the European response, it seemed particularly unified and sharp, which is always the case when it comes to Israeli actions.
No, it isn't. But this time, they were very much aligned. The UK Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, stated clearly that the strike violates Qatar's sovereignty and risks further escalation. French President Macron labeled it unacceptable, whatever the reason may be. Just flat out unacceptable.
No caveats there.
None. Germany, traditionally a very strong ally of Israel, called the attack unacceptable and issued a stark warning that it directly threatens ceasefire efforts.
Even Germany. Wow.
And the European Union as a whole issued a strong statement declaring that it breaches international law and Qatar's territorial integrity.
So a united European front.
Pretty much. This level of consensus among major European powers, speaking with one voice, is very significant and adds substantial weight to the global condemnation.
And what about the Arab world? How did they react?
Swiftly, decisively, and with remarkable unity. Qatar itself, obviously, as the directly targeted nation, had its emir condemn the reckless criminal attack.
Understandable.
And importantly, Qatar is now actively mobilizing a legal team to prepare an international case against Israel. That's a major legal and diplomatic development with potentially long-term repercussions.
Taking them to court, essentially.
That seems to be the plan. And significantly, Saudi Arabia and the UAE, countries that have at times shown some willingness to engage with Israel diplomatically, they issued equally strong condemnations.
So even potential partners condemned it.
Absolutely. Immediately following the strike, an emergency Arab-Islamic summit was called in Doha to discuss a collective response. That signals a unified front against Israel's actions across the region.
A collective response? That sounds serious.
It is, and Egypt, Jordan, Morocco, also key players in the region, similarly condemned the violation of sovereignty. This isn't just rhetoric, it represents a serious diplomatic realignment. Previously, diverging interests seem to have converged in opposition to this perceived overreach by Israel.
And beyond the immediate region in Europe, did other allies weigh in?
Yes, they did. Other key allied nations also voiced concern and condemnation. Canada, Australia, Japan, they all issued warnings that the attack hinders diplomatic efforts.
Hinders diplomacy. Understatement, maybe.
Perhaps. And critically, a joint letter from no fewer than 25 nations collectively condemned Israeli actions. So the message from the global community was crystal clear, delivered from multiple corners of the world, leaving very little doubt about the depth of international disapproval.
Okay, so this leads us to the big question then. What does all of this mean for Israel's international standing and its future diplomatic efforts?
Well, the level of global unity and condemnation is truly striking, isn't it? It suggests that this event has significantly isolated Israel on the world stage, potentially more so than any other single action in recent memory.
More isolated than ever before.
Arguably, yes. When you have such a diverse group of nations, including your closest allies like the U.S. and major European powers, speaking with one voice in condemnation, it indicates a profound shift in perception and a severe diplomatic cost for Israel.
So what are the consequences of that isolation?
It makes any future diplomatic efforts on their part, particularly regarding peace processes or regional normalization, like the Abraham Accords, exponentially more difficult. The trust and goodwill necessary for such endeavors have been severely eroded by this single act. conflict.
Okay, so while all this diplomatic fallout from the Qatar strike unfolds and reverberates across the globe, a far more silent yet infinitely more devastating catastrophe was reaching its horrifying climax inside Gaza.
The situation there is beyond dire.
The diplomatic fallout, however severe it is, it just pales in comparison to the scale of human suffering unfolding there, where the very act of survival has become a daily battle against now declared famine and systematic destruction.
Yeah.
These aren't just abstract statistics we're talking about anymore. These are lives, these are families, an entire generation at risk, experiencing just unimaginable suffering every single day.
And if we place this event within the broader context of the conflict, the crisis in Gaza has reached a truly critical inflection point. Famine has now been officially declared, and aid channels are completely choked off.
Which leads us to ask that deeply moral question, doesn't it? One that humanity has grappled with for centuries. Can starvation ever be justified as a weapon of war?
It's a question that hangs heavy over this entire situation. The data from the sources you've shared is just. It's heartbreaking. It paints an unfathomably grim picture.
Give us the numbers, Ian. They're hard to comprehend.
As of September 14th, the Gaza Health Ministry reported an astonishing 64,803 Palestinians killed,
64,000.
with 161,245 injured since October 2023. And what's particularly devastating, as the sources highlight, is that over half of these casualties are women and children.
Half are women and children.
The sheer scale of the human cost is immense, and tragically, it's still climbing. We also know that over 360 UNRWA staff.
That's the UN Relief and Works Agency.
Yes, the primary UN body dedicated to providing aid and services to Palestinian refugees. Over 360 of their staff have been killed while simply attempting to help.
Killed doing aid work.
Exactly. Furthermore, a staggering 86% of the Gaza Strip is now either under Israeli military control or subject to displacement orders. That leaves people with virtually nowhere safe to go within their own land.
86%, almost the entire territory.
And the famine crisis. It's no longer a looming threat. It has moved from projection to horrifying reality.
When was it officially declared?
On August 22nd, 2025, the Integrated Food Security Phase Classification, the IPC, officially confirmed famine in Gaza.
And the IPC, that's the global standard, right?
It is. It's a global initiative providing a common, scientifically rigorous classification of food insecurity and malnutrition. It ensures a consistent assessment of hunger crises worldwide.
So when they declare famine?
It's not a casual statement.
Yeah.
It's a declaration based on very severe indicators. At least 20% of households facing extreme food shortages, over 30% of children suffering from acute malnutrition, and tragically, 2 people per 10,000 dying each day from starvation or related diseases.
And Gaza met those criteria.
For the entire population to meet these criteria across the board, it's an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe in modern history.
Unprecedented.
The numbers are truly staggering. 470,000 people are now on the very brink of mass starvation.
Nearly 500,000 people.
And the dire consequences are already being seen. 367 malnutrition deaths have been documented. Heartbreakingly, 131 of those were children.
Children starving to death.
Yes. And in July 2025 alone, 12,000 children under the age of 5 were suffering from acute malnutrition. An average of 112 children per day were admitted for malnutrition treatment.
112 kids a day.
That's a child admitted for severe hunger every few minutes. It points to a systemic failure on a massive scale.
It's a catastrophe unfolding in real time. And the desperate search for food, it's actually become a deadly gamble, hasn't it?
It has. Since May 27, 2025, these Gaza Humanitarian Foundation aid sites, which should be places of solace and relief, have instead become perilous killing zones.
Killing zones, how?
The data from the sources reveals a horrifying reality.
Yeah.
2,456 Palestinians have been killed seeking food aid.
Killed trying to get food.
Yes. And an additional 17,861 wounded at these distribution points. There were 21 mass casualty events in the first month alone, just at these aid sites.
Mass casualty events at aid points.
Survivors tragically refer to these places as death traps rather than sources of aid. It's a chilling testament to the extreme dangers people face simply trying to feed their families.
There was an eyewitness report cited.
Yes, one report described the scene at an aid distribution point as, quote, a terrifying lottery of life and death, where the hungry became targets and a single loaf of bread could cost you everything.
Unimaginable. And the situation is made worse by a deliberate, sustained blockade on humanitarian access, right?
Absolutely. For over 150 days, that's 5 long months, no UNRWA aid trucks have been allowed into Gaza.
5 months. No UN aid trucks.
Imagine that. 5 months without essential relief from the primary agency. Specifically, since March 2nd, 2025, no shelter materials, no medicine, and no food from UNRWA have entered the Strip.
So basic necessities blocked.
It isn't just an accident or a logistical challenge. The sources suggest it represents a systematic dismantling of the ability to sustain life, impacting every single aspect of survival.
And the long-term impact.
Immense. Especially on infrastructure and future food security. A devastating 86% of cropland in Gaza has been damaged or completely destroyed. That fundamentally undermines any future capacity for self-sufficiency. They can't grow their own food.
And the human suffering extends beyond just the immediate food crisis, doesn't it?
Profoundly. The displacement figures are staggering. 1.9 million people, that's 90% of the population, displaced from their homes, often multiple times over.
90%.
There have been 796,000 displacement movements recorded since March 18th alone. That indicates a population constantly on the move, desperately seeking an elusive safe haven that simply doesn't exist.
And the children. Their future.
Jeopardized. 658,000 students are now without any access to education. Their schools are damaged or destroyed, their lives completely uprooted, their futures incredibly uncertain.
The lost generation.
It's not just a food crisis, it's a complete societal breakdown, affecting every single fabric of life for the people of Gaza.
The devastating human toll, particularly among children, it's where this story really hits home, isn't it? It resonates with just a universal sense of tragedy. The numbers are staggering, they paint this horrific picture, but behind each one is a human story. A story of struggle, loss, unimaginable pain. What stands out to you about the sheer scale of suffering, and what are the long-term implications for a generation being systematically stripped of its most basic needs and its future prospects?
I mean, it's hard to even put into words. You're talking about trauma on an unimaginable scale. Children witnessing death, destruction, starvation, losing parents, losing siblings. The psychological scars alone will last for generations, even if the physical rebuilding can somehow happen. And without education, without basic security, without hope, you're creating conditions for despair and instability for decades to come. It's a catastrophic failure, not just for Gaza, but for the entire region, and arguably for humanity's conscience.
Okay, so amidst this deepening humanitarian crisis, this widespread international outcry, Israel has announced plans for a significant new military operation in Gaza.
Yes, Operation Gideon's Chariots II.
At the same time, the fate of the remaining hostages hangs by an increasingly thin thread. A situation further complicated and, it really seems, made even more desperate by that recent Doha strike.
These two narratives are tragically intertwined, aren't they? Each impacting the other in profound ways.
So tell us about this new operation.
Well, a critical aspect to consider here is the declared objective of Operation Gideon's Chariots II. It raises serious questions about international law and the potential for even greater civilian harm in an already devastated, densely populated area.
What's the plan?
Israel plans a complete military takeover of Gaza City. The target date mentioned in the sources is mid-September 2025.
So imminently.
Yes. And the stated objective is chillingly stark, according to the sources, to force Hamas surrender or raze entire city.
Raze entire city.
That's the language used. This plan directly targets an estimated 1 million Palestinians who are currently in Gaza City, many of whom are already displaced from other areas, having sought refuge there after fleeing previous military operations.
1 million people in the target zone.
Exactly. And this operation has been widely condemned internationally as a clear violation of international law, given the scale of potential destruction and the catastrophic civilian casualties it would almost certainly entail.
What would it involve?
The specifics, as detailed in some military analyses from our sources, suggest a multi-phase ground offensive combined with intense aerial bombardment, aiming to systematically dismantle urban infrastructure and eliminate any remaining Hamas strongholds, seemingly regardless of the human cost.
And it's not just the international community raising alarms about this, is it?
No, there's significant opposition within Israel itself. Opposition leader Yair Lapid called it a far-right plot, and perhaps most damningly, a death sentence to hostages.
A death sentence to hostages.
That's his assessment. Also, 8 European nations have issued a joint condemnation, adding their voices to the chorus of concern regarding the legality and humanitarian implications of such an extensive military operation in a densely populated urban area.
The very idea of raising an entire city, even with a stated military objective, it just carries immense moral and legal weight, doesn't it?
It really does. It suggests a kind of scorched earth approach that very few international observers would deem justifiable under international law.
And the potential for further mass casualties.
It's immense, particularly as Gaza City is where many of the remaining civilians have sought shelter. They've often been displaced multiple times, believing it to be a relatively safer zone.
And now it's the target.
The idea that a military operation of this scale, with such a stated objective, could be carried out without catastrophic humanitarian consequences is simply untenable. It effectively corners 1 million people, gives them no viable escape route, turning an already dire situation into, potentially, an apocalypse for those trapped within.
Meanwhile, the clock is ticking for the Israeli hostages still held in Gaza. This is a story of immense personal tragedy, a constant, agonizing presence throughout this entire conflict.
Yeah. Terrible situation.
How has the Doha strike impacted their already desperate situation? Has it effectively severed a lifeline that many hoped would lead to their safe return?
It certainly seems that way. The situation for the hostages is dire and becoming more so by the day, directly complicated by these recent events.
How many are left, do we know?
Currently, 48 hostages are believed to remain in Gaza. Tragically, only 20 of them are believed to be alive, according to intelligence estimates cited in the sources.
Only 20 alive, out of 48.
That's the assessment. And reports indicate that Hamas is deliberately moving these hostages into active combat zones that further endangers their lives and complicates any potential rescue attempts.
Making them human shields, effectively.
That's the fear. The hostage families are, understandably vocal and desperate, stating unequivocally their time is running out. It's a plea that resonates deeply. President Trump has also publicly demanded that all hostages be released all at once, reflecting the urgency and frustration surrounding their captivity and the failure to secure their release through previous channels.
And this is where the Doha strike becomes a double tragedy, right? Not just for the victims of the bombing, but potentially for the hostages, too.
Exactly. The strike occurred precisely as Hamas negotiators were considering a U.S. proposal. A proposal that offered a clear path forward, not just for the hostages, but for a de-escalation of the conflict.
What was in that U.S. proposal?
It was detailed in the sources. It included several critical components. The release of all 48 hostages in the first 48 hours.
All of them, quickly.
Yes. Then a 60-day truce, an exchange for Palestinian prisoners, and critically, a path towards permanent ceasefire negotiations.
So a comprehensive deal was on the table?
It was a deal that offered a real glimmer of hope, both for the hostages and their families, and for a broader, potentially lasting peace.
And the strike.
That glimmer of hope was effectively extinguished by the strike. The Qatari Prime Minister explicitly stated that the Israel strike killed any hope for the hostages.
Killed any hope.
When the very act of targeting negotiators also obliterates the negotiation process itself, the consequences are profound and devastating.
Which brings us back to that question, what's the end game? When the proposed military solution is to raise the city where some of the remaining hostages might actually be held.
And the very negotiations that could save them are sabotaged by a strike on the mediator's capital.
What happens then?
The immediate consequence is not only the tragic loss of life in the strike itself, but also a near impossible path forward for those still captive. It deepens their families' anguish and makes any resolution seem utterly out of reach. It represents a complete breakdown of any strategy for their return, replacing diplomacy with an escalation of violence and sealing off those critical avenues for de-escalation.
Okay, so the repercussions of this Qatar strike, they extend far beyond Gaza, don't they? They seem to be fundamentally altering the diplomatic landscape of the entire Middle East and posing new, complex challenges for global powers, particularly the United States. This isn't just about one isolated incident. It feels like a seismic shift, sending tremors across the region and beyond.
Yeah, stepping back to understand the broader context, this attack has truly created a kind of regional earthquake. It's potentially realigning alliances and severely undermining efforts towards peace and stability that have been painstakingly built over years.
How has Qatar responded beyond the condemnation?
Well, their response, understandably, has been firm and multifaceted. Their crucial role as a mediator, which was vital for facilitating talks, maintaining lines of communication with various factions, that role has been, in their own words, destroyed.
Destroyed.
Trust completely broken. As we mentioned, Qatar is now hosting that emergency Arab-Islamic summit to form a collective response with regional allies. That signals a unified front against Israel's actions that promises sustained diplomatic pressure.
And the legal action.
They're mobilizing a legal team to prepare an international case against Israel. That could have long-term legal and diplomatic ramifications, potentially even at the International Criminal Court.
And the U.S. base. Al Udeid.
Critically, the future of the largest U.S. military base in the region, Al Udeid Air Base, is now uncertain. There are discussions underway, according to the sources, about its long-term viability in Qatar.
Wow. That would be huge for the U.S.
It's a direct threat to core U.S. strategic interests and its military posture in the Middle East.
And this incident has had a powerful unifying effect among the Gulf states, hasn't it? Which is a truly significant development in regional dynamics.
It really is. This marks the first time Israel has directly attacked a GCC member, and that has led to an unprecedented regional alignment against Israeli actions.
So even states that were warming to Israel.
We've seen strong condemnations from Saudi Arabia and the UAE, signaling a collective disapproval that cuts across previous diplomatic divisions and internal rivalries. It's truly a new chapter in how these nations perceive and interact with Israel, moving from potential rapprochement back towards unified opposition.
So the Abraham Accords.
The momentum of the Abraham Accords, which sought to normalize relations between Israel and several Arab nations, is now severely threatened, if not completely halted.
Why?
Well, these accords were built on that fragile balance of shared geopolitical interests, particularly concerns about Iran and economic incentives. An attack on a GCC member state fundamentally shatters that premise.
So what does it mean for the UAE and Bahrain who signed the accords?
For them, key signatories, this isn't just about diplomatic optics. It forces a strategic reassessment of Israel as a reliable security partner. Their significant investments in normalization, both economic and political, are now jeopardized. We could see a rollback or at least a freeze in existing relationships.
And Saudi Arabia, they were rumored to be next.
For Saudi Arabia, which has been in delicate, indirect talks regarding normalization, the idea of formal normalization is now, for all practical purposes, off the table for the foreseeable future. Public sentiment across the Arab world is unifying in condemnation of Israel's actions.
So a major realignment.
A significant regional realignment underway, yes, where former bridges are being burned and older alliances are being reinforced in opposition to Israel's actions. It's fundamentally redrawing the diplomatic map.
And this also profoundly exacerbates President Trump's broader dilemma, doesn't it? Creates an incredibly complicated situation for U.S. foreign policy in the region.
Immensely complicated.
The attack directly threatens critical strategic partnerships across the Gulf. That impacts wider U.S. interests in counterterrorism, cooperation, regional stability, energy security, its overall strategic influence.
Everything. The U.S. relies heavily on these relationships for its global posture. And this unilateral action by Israel has put all of them in jeopardy.
So the U.S. is under pressure now.
Immense pressure to recalibrate its approach to the region. It might require difficult choices between its closest ally, Israel, and its broader strategic imperatives in the Middle East.
Choices it probably doesn't want to make.
Indeed. The U.S. has always tried to perform this balancing act, unwavering commitment to Israel, alongside its broader strategic interests in the Arab world. This incident makes that balancing act incredibly difficult, maybe impossible. It could force the U.S. to make hard choices with long-lasting consequences for its standing and influence in the Middle East for decades to come. The long-term implications are vast, suggesting a more fractured, more volatile regional landscape.
So what does this all truly mean for the long game in the Middle East? This deep dive into the source material really shows us, doesn't it, that the Qatar strike isn't just an isolated incident.
No, it's far more than that.
It's a critical inflection point, fundamentally reshaping alliances, deepening existing divisions, and casting a long, dark shadow over any immediate prospects for peace and stability. The ripple effects of this single event will undoubtedly be felt for years to come, right across the entire geopolitical spectrum.
Which I think leads us to ask one final critical question, really.
Yeah.
When you bomb the mediator's capital, targeting the very individuals engaged in peace talks, you're not trying to make peace.
What are you doing then?
You are, in effect, ensuring that there won't be any.
So the question now isn't merely whether this ends the current conflict. It's whether this specific action lights the fuse for a much bigger, more widespread regional war.
That's the terrifying possibility, isn't it?
It really is. Well, we truly hope you found this deep dive into these critical events insightful and thought-provoking. If you're listening on YouTube, please do take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel.
Yeah, it helps a lot.
And if you're on Spotify, a follow would mean a lot to us. It helps us continue to bring you these detailed explorations and unpack the most important information from the sources you share.